Hi everyone. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about my own awakening journey because I'm aware that's something that I haven't really talked about that much, or at least not sort of in one video. But I know from working with coaching clients, I'm an awakening coach, that it's actually really reassuring for people to hear other stories and to understand that they're not alone in this journey, and that, everyone is sort of going through something similar. So basically, my awakening started in 2019. I say that it actually started a long time before, when I started doing my inner work, which would probably be around, I don't know, 2012, something like that. So, but I obviously wasn't aware that that was part of the awakening process. But when the really weird stuff started to happen, that was 2019. And what happened was I went on a fasting retreat. And the reason I went on a fasting retreat was nothing to do with spirituality whatsoever. I was not a spiritual person, had no real interest in that aspect of things. But I had been suffering from chronic fatigue syndrome, which had come out of the blue, lasted for a couple of years by that point. And, I was sleeping 16 hours a day. I wasn't really functioning, couldn't really work anymore, not full time at least. And I just really wanted to fix it. So I heard that fasting was a way to fix it. So off I went on this retreat, and I went to a place in Glastonbury in the UK. And if you know anything about Glastonbury, it's an enormous spiritual centre, enormous energetic centre, lots of ley lines, etc. But I didn't. I sort of knew the stories about Glastonbury because I'd lived nearby for a while, but I hadn't really paid any attention because I wasn't interested in spirituality. So anyway, so I was on this retreat, and obviously no substances involved, not alcohol, no, nothing at all. Literally vegetable juice and water. That was it. But as part of the retreat, we were being given certain treatments, spiritual treatments. So things like sound baths and energetic massage, stuff like that. And I found that I was spontaneously slipping into trance. So I was going into a very, very deep trance, completely dissociated from physical reality. And I met my guide at the time. Hathor, the cow goddess, was one of my guides. And she brought members of my family to me who had passed over. And I had conversations with them, and it was all very peculiar. Anyway, so I came back from the retreat, and weird things continued to happen intermittently when I was back home. And I also discovered that I was sort of increasingly psychic, that I was sort of reading minds or seeing the future or intuiting events. All of this stuff was happening, but I never connected it to spiritual awakening. I didn't even really know what spiritual awakening was, and I certainly wasn't aware that this was a thing that a lot of people were starting to go through. But then after the COVID lockdowns, or during the first COVID lockdown in 2020, I had my epiphany. And the epiphany is the moment where you kind of go, oh, hang on a minute, there is really something happening here. This is something important. I need to understand it. And what happened in my epiphany was I was just relaxing at the end of the day. I was listening to music, had the fire on. It was all very lovely. And a voice in my head said, oh, if you lie down, you'll enjoy the music more. And I thought, yeah, probably will. So I lay down, and I was enjoying the music. And then this voice said, well, if you closed your eyes, you would see more. And I thought, oh, yeah, that makes sense. which of course it does if you know anything about the third eye, which I did not. So I closed my eyes, and all of a sudden I had this sensation of revolving in space, a bit like if you've ever scuba dived. It was like that, the sort of sense of rotation. And I looked down, and a long way below me there was this kind of bobbing ball of light, and I sort of just understood that that was my soul, that I knew that that was my soul. And then the thought came into my mind, I am an immortal being who has chosen to inhabit this body for this lifetime. And I had never thought that in my life before. This was a completely, reincarnation was not a new idea to me, but the idea that I was an immortal soul was a new idea to me. And I proceeded through the night, probably for a good 3 or 4 hours, to have a conversation with my soul, who introduced me to lots of ideas, for example, that consciousness exists outside of the brain, that everything is energy, that reincarnation is a thing. So all of these kind of metaphysical ideas is what I was being taught. And then when I went up to bed, I sort of got into bed, and the room was dark, and it was kind of early, like it was like maybe 5 in the morning, and I was like, I just need to sleep. And there was this huge, bright, white, blue column of light in the corner of the room, and 2 little bobbing souls, I guess, little balls of light, had followed me up to bed, and they were kind of pinging around my head and sort of pointing to the column of light. And I understood that what they wanted me to do was to go out of body, like I used to do, because strangely enough, for a materialist atheist, I did used to go out of body up until about the age of 15 or 16, when it just freaked me out because I was floating out of the window one night, and I was like, no, I'm not allowing this to happen. So yeah, anyway, so I was aware that that's what they were trying to get me to do, and the whole thing was just so overwhelming, and I just said, this is too much for me, I can't cope with this, and it all shut down exactly like that. And I do still wonder to this day what would have happened if I had gone, what would I have seen. Anyway, it didn't really matter, because continuing after that, first of all, I did a ton of research. I didn't read spiritual texts. What I read was, to begin with, at least scientific texts. And what I found was that right on the fringes of scientific research, everything that I had been told could be substantiated. So I started putting a picture together of what this whole thing was all about, what this is all about. And then I sort of got into a meditation practice, and what happened was, then as soon as I started to meditate, which I was doing mostly at 3 in the afternoon, I was taking a break from working, and I was sort of working on a project during the COVID lockdowns. I would take a break in the afternoon, I would go meditate, and then what happened was I was getting all of these downloads, real teaching, metaphysical teachings. And gradually over time, because I, like the majority of us going through awakening, at that stage of the journey, I didn't have language, so I wasn't getting verbal messages, but I was getting visions, senses of knowing. I was being directed to other texts that helped me make sense of it all, But what I came to understand gradually over time was that I am a channel, and I'm a channel for the Council of Light and for Source Energy, and I was working with all of these incredible beings. Like Jesus was one of my guides in the early days, and I still have a lot of contact with him now, and I was working with all these senior beings who were just teaching me and teaching me and teaching me. And then when language switched on, it started to come just before the spiritual dark night of the soul. Obviously nothing during the spiritual dark night of the soul, but when I came out of that phase, bang, it was just like I was talking to someone sat in the room next to me. And then I really started to get all the teachings. And it became clear that my mission was to be a conduit for this information and to disseminate it, to share, which I do on my various social media pages, and I do through my books, and also I have an online course, An Introduction to Spiritual Awakening, which lays it all out, gives you all the information and all of the protocols you need to get you through early awakening. So, very much that is part of my mission, to sort of share that information. So basically, I work with the guys, still daily, I would say. I'm still, mostly now we've got the picture across the top, so I'm refining, I'm going down into more layers of detail, understanding a lot more about how this environment works, and how do you navigate it, and how do you fulfill your mission, which is kind of the bit after awakening. Once you've awakened, what do you then do with it? How do you fulfill your mission? So I'm still working with these guys, but honestly, what I can say is, this journey has been so transformative, and I have said this before elsewhere, I think, but I left a marriage, and I should say that my ex-husband and myself are still very close friends. We still look after each other a lot. He has a new partner. They're perfectly suited. He's, blissed up. I'm super happy, everything to the good. But, I left a marriage, a very successful marriage, actually. I left my career. I managed to kick a 25-year-old alcohol addiction, a very serious addiction. I lost 50 pounds in weight. I left the United Kingdom for a couple of years. I went and lived abroad so I could just have a complete change of scene and work out, who am I? And, and I learned I'm a creative soul. So I spent all my time in big business, but I became a painter. I became a painter, a writer, and obviously a coach as well. This is how I spend the majority of my time. So that kind of in a nutshell is my journey. I won't go into sort of all the later stages because honestly it's a weird and wobbly path, as you will know if you're on it yourself, but just to give you an idea of the early stages. But honestly, yeah, I mean, the thing is completely transformational, and I just always say to people, I was so screwed up. I had so much trauma in my early life. I had learned so many bad behaviors. I was so ego driven, like the majority of us are before awakening. And honestly, if I could untangle all of that and get to where I am today, which is fully actualized, I'm at the end of the awakening journey. If I can do that, you can do that.